Hello there and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden. Now this week we're going to be pruning roses, shrub roses. In my rose border which we created last year, I've got two different types. The first are old hybrid tea roses. They're about 20 years old, and the others of course are those bare root roses I planted only last autumn. So they're going into their first growing season. I'm very excited to see how they're going to behave. So very important, the pruning of one and the other. So let's get going. This is rose number one. It is a David Austin rose. This particular one is called Pat Austin, and it's a 3 to 4 foot one, and it's a copper coloured flower. Absolutely divine. Now the first thing you want to know is how many canes you leave. There's some people say 3, some people say 5. It has to make sense. A rose is always vessel shaped. It always has to be open in the middle. And if you say, oh my God, this has got 5 canes instead of 3, and you end up cutting, taking 2 out and sort of leaving a semicircle instead of a bush, that's the wrong idea. It has to make sense. Now, in the case of bare root roses, when you buy them, they tend to be pretty much sized to planting. You have a little bit extra over, but you don't usually get huge, big bare root roses like this. This was about 1 foot high, which enables me to have excess for winter damage. There's a little bit of winter damage on this. And I'm going to be cutting it down to around about 6 inches. But the first thing I need to do is get rid of those wayward branches. As you can see here, there is a large branch here that is coming right into the centre of the bush. And if I take out the little sign or push it down a bit, putting out, you'll see here it is actually crossing this one here behind. So this cross here we don't want, and I certainly don't want anything growing towards the centre of the shrub. So this will come out immediately. Obviously the first thing you need are a very sharp pair of pruners. With rose bushes, always use a bleach solution. This is a 10% bleach obviously to 90% water. Make up small amounts because you only want to use what is necessary and not have to chuck it down the toilet or chuck it down the sink afterwards. So make up a small amount that you know you're going to use over the next maybe week at the most, and that should be it. In the case of roses, it's particularly important because you can get transfer of spores or viruses from one plant to the other. So you give it a quick spray. And one other important thing, just in case I forget to say it afterwards, once you've been using bleach, do rub it over with oil afterwards before you put it away, because you don't want to get it rusty. Right, so put on my gloves, and this is the offending branch. It's going to go right down to base here. Hopefully you can see it in the camera, not getting in the way myself. Nice clean cut. If your secateurs are nice and sharp, you get this nice clean cut, not a crushed cut, which leaves it open to every type of infection. So that was branch number one. Now what are we going to have a look at? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 divided into 2. Okay, so I don't like this one here because it's right in the centre and it's very, very close to this one. So we're going to, first of all, take half of it off so we can see what we're doing. Just get it down a bit. Right, and then we're going to take it fully down, but I'm going to with my finger just make sure that I can get in without doing any damage. In this case, I think I'm going to be using the snips, which are a lot smaller and easier to get into these tight spaces. Okay, so I removed the crossing one and I removed this one that was up in the centre. Now what do? I've still got this one, which is divided into 2, this one which is on its own, and this one which again is divided into 2. Right, now this is actually thicker than this one, but it is quite sturdy. And this one is very close to the one beside it. So what in actual fact I'm going to do is come down to the fork here, and I'm going to cut this one flush to the fork. Like this. Nice clean cut. And now I've got 3 which opens up into 4. Now this one I could reduce now, but in actual fact I'm going to leave it for a while to see how it goes and which branch I prefer, because at the moment it's lovely and open in the centre here, and all I need to do now is reduce it in height. And you do reduce it to an outer facing bud, and I am old school, I still face away from the bud on the slant, just for practice. This is going to give you the slant you need. This is the bud that is now leafed out. All you've got to do is come in on a flight plane, parallel to that, and go like that. See how it's parallel? And that gives you, if this is the bud, the slant away, so the water rolls away and not onto the bud. You say, okay, that's all very well, but you can see that because it's leafed out. And what happens if it's a bud you can't? Well, just have a look at this one here. That's a bud. So using my imagination, I'd be coming in at the same angle. Imagining that's leafed out towards me. I'd be coming in at the same angle, so the bud is facing towards me, and I'd face it down and cut off like that. Now I am going to be cutting further down because I want it at 6 inches. So I'm looking for is an outward facing bud. So I've got one here, and the cut is made about 1/4 of an inch above it. Get rid of that, it's in my way. Downward facing slant, And there it goes. Now something else I tend to do at this stage, this is an inward facing bud which is going to go right towards the centre. So just with my nail, flick it off. Outward facing bud, coming in at an angle. That's number 1 done. Somewhere in the region between 4 to 6 inches, nice and open in the centre. Here I've left 3 with a division here, and I'll see what I'll do with that afterwards. In this case, I'm leaving 3. That might not be the case in another one. Now the next one is Leonardo da Vinci. I'm not overly excited about the framework here. This one is quite upright, but these ones, as you can see, are sort of lying over at an angle. Now you can do 2 things. You can either wait for the end of the growing season, lift it up and then try and hinge it like this, in which case this one would lean, but the other ones, you might eliminate this one and leave these ones upright. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it, because there's a lot of new growth down here, and as this new growth grows, it might form a framework that I like better than the actual one. So what I'm going to do for the moment is just cut it down a bit, do an outside bud, and we'll just wait and see what it does and how it behaves. Outward bud. Remember, if it was like this, you'd be coming in with your airplane. Plaque. This one is definitely on the inside of this shrub area, so I am going to remove this one right down to base. Wait, getting in my way. And these ones I'm just going to take down to this outward facing bud. That's 1. This I don't want because it's facing inwards already. I'm going to get over the other side now, but this one I'm going to take above here so this starts growing up and might form my new framework. And this one I'm going to leave, but coming in at an angle from this side. Right, this one is Boscobel. The first thing we're going to get rid of is this dead branch. And I'm going to get rid of the whole branch actually right down to base here. There's a little stub here I want to get rid of as well. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, and of these 3 branches, this one is subdivided and this one is also subdivided. Now as you can see very clearly, this one is already causing havoc here. So this one has got to go. I'm going to cut this right back, flush with the other one. These I'm actually going to leave, and I want to see which of the 2 of these I like. At the moment they're fine, they're not showing any problems or any future problems or immediate problems. That could change obviously as the growing season goes on, but for the moment I'm okay with it. So here I'm going to come in right above this one, which is already leafed out. Here the same thing, I'm going to come in just about above this one. I'm going to go around the other side for the other ones. Now the outer facing bud on this one is lower down, it's down here, so I'm actually in fact going to take it down as far as here, 1/4 of an inch above. Hopefully the Felcos will have no problem with this thicker branch, and of course they don't. Fantastic instrument, the Felcos, absolutely wonderful. This last bare root rose is Dolce Vita. It's got a whole pile of branches, so obviously we don't have that many. Right, the first ones you can get rid of, this one is dead, virtually down to the end. If you want to save a branch, you keep cutting back to see still dead, alive. But in this particular case, I want to take it out because there's too many canes here. So down to ground level, maybe a little bit more. There we go. This again, this one has dead up on the top. It's alive at the part at the bottom, but I'm going to get rid of this part of it. Now, let me see. Let's have a look. The next one I'm going to get rid of is this one, which is in the centre, right in the centre of that. And I don't want that. I'm going to go down, just remove some of this mulch. You can't see what I'm doing. Get in there with those Felcos. Around this way, that's better. Actually going to go on the other side so I don't block your view. So we're going to get rid of the centre one now. Now immediately that is opened up quite substantially. This again, leaning towards the centre. I'm going to cut the label off. Now we're starting to see something. I've got now 1, 2, 3, that's a subdivision 4, so I got 4 to 5. Now the question is which one to take and which one to leave. Now in actual fact I'm going to get rid of this one. Hope you can see that. Not to worry about the label, I've already got the label here. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Am I going to take out any more? No, I'm not. Because this is a beautiful shrub shape. It's open in the centre, and I've got 5 canes, and that's okay. Now what I need to do is get rid of height-wise. So outward facing bud, coming down, about 1/4 of an inch above, outward facing bud, coming at an angle. And there we go. Now we come to the scary ones, these old established 20 year plus roses. This one in actual fact I had to move, I had to retransplant, and the other one last autumn because it was in the wrong position for this new rose border. So I actually reduced it in height from about 6 foot high down to its present height, and obviously I'm going to now reduce it even further. But what do you do with these old roses? Well, basically don't be afraid of them. They've got lots going on. They've got insect damage, hollowed out stems. So when I see something like this going on, I'm not going to be cutting it above, I'm going to be taking it right back down. Again, this was incorrectly pruned by the previous owner, there's lots of stubs left, and all it's done is left it open for insect damage and goodness knows what else. So as you can see down here, right there where my finger is, there are outward facing buds. Don't be afraid to take it right down. You can rejuvenate this. These are old ones with no growth, but if you can see there's life here, you can see sort of like a swelling there. If I cut above here with loppers, obviously because my secateurs are not going to be able to go anywhere with this one, if I take it out with loppers, a new branch is going to come and it's a new outward facing one. Here, I'm going to sacrifice this one in the middle because that is growing right into the centre and it's going to cause problems. This is a very vigorous grower. I'm going to be removing branches like this that are growing into the centre, and basically I'm going to be leaving this one and let them do their thing. With these old established roses, you'd normally be taking them down every year, a third or even a half, but you can in actual fact go even further. You can do a rejuvenation pruning. You just be looking for a place on the trunk with an outer facing bud and cut just above it, and it will spring back. But for the moment, all I want to do is get this beautiful vessel shape, maintain it nice and clean on the inside, and take away those crossing branches that I can see already, and leave it ready for the growing season. So let's get going on this one. Big shrub, big thorns, heavy gloves. This one is growing to the inside. Obviously need loppers for this. This one has insect damage, so again, right back to base. Here again, insect damage, we're going to cut that back. It's hollowed right back. Cut back a bit further. That's better. This one is obviously going to cause serious problems. I'm going to take this one right down to base. Inward growing branch. As well. And get rid of any stubs from previous years that weren't correctly pruned. Now, while we're here, this is an old rose. As I said, it's over 20 years old. And I'd like to show you the graft, because way back in the day, grafts are always kept above ground. If you were planting a rose nowadays, you'd just plant it to this level, so you wouldn't be able to see it. But let's take advantage of the fact that it is an old rose and you can actually see the graft. The graft is where two separate plants join together. The rootstock and the one you actually bought, the pretty one. Rootstock is generally different. It may be to be able to control the size, or to make it more vigorous, or to be more disease resistant. So always be on the lookout for any sucker coming below this level. Anything from here upwards is going to resemble the plant that you bought. Anything from here downwards isn't. So any suckers coming up from here or below the ground have to be removed immediately, because all they do is take away energy from the plants you want to grow and it's going to look nothing like the parents. The leaves are probably going to be different and the flower is definitely going to be different. This one, as you can see, has got dead wood. Not to be confused with old wood. This wood is old, it's gnarly, it's wrinkled. It happens to us all, don't I only know it? But it doesn't mean it's got to be pushing up the daisies quite yet. We're going to remove the dead wood first. Next thing we're going to remove is spindly growth. Next thing we're going to be removing are crossing branches. Fairly obvious one here. Next thing, ones that are growing towards the centre, this one. Next, ones that are incorrectly pruned. Not happy about this one. Better. Now, as I was cutting this one, I was cutting a branch off here, a weevil came out of the centre of this, so I had to cut it right back to where it was nice and healthy. Now, just one thing before I finish. This is a very old shrub, as I said before, but the framework is nice and open. But what do you do if the framework isn't nice? We'll just have a quick flick to the back garden for literally 30 seconds and I'll show you what to do. This is again an old rose. The framework I don't like at all. It's very crowded. This in actual fact is a double one, but it's not even double. As it goes further down, it joins into this one. So in actual fact, it's one single cane that's branched out into 1, 2, 3 separate branches. This has to be cut back, obviously, because it's got insect damage as well. But it is crowded in there, and what can you do? If I cut it back, I'm going to be left with just a single, like a standard, and I don't want a standard, I want an actual shrub. So if I pull back a bit, you'll see the last growing season, I actually started forming a new framework. And that's how you go about it. If you don't like the old one, form a new one. Well, as you can see, it actually wasn't at all that difficult now, was it? It took me maybe about half an hour, and I had the camera with me. If I didn't have the camera, it would probably take me about 10 minutes. Obviously, I have a lot of experience, so I go quicker. In the beginning, err on the side of caution, because obviously when the branch has been cut off, you can't put it back on. But you very quickly learn which branches go and which branches don't. And certainly I would recommend, especially with bush roses or shrubs that are maybe about 4 to 5 foot, get them down a bit so they're not poking in your eye before you start. But remember where they were, because if you're going to bring it down a third or a half, it's a third and a half from its full height. So don't get it down to maybe about 24 inches and then take a further half off. Remember, the information is there just as a guideline. You don't say, oh, she said 3, it has to be 3 canes. It has to be 5 canes. It's whatever it needs to be. If you have a beautiful shape, it's airy, it's open, and you get no sort of crossing branches or rubbing branches, well, then it's 5, and that's absolutely perfect. Don't be put off by it. It's not that difficult. And certainly a lot of people are put off by maintenance of roses when it isn't really that much of a deal. Next week, possibly we're getting into slightly more complicated. Next week, I'm probably going to be tackling climbing roses. And I'm going into my next door neighbour's garden. Now, she has a problem. She has a pergola with roses, long-term roses, about 15, 20 years old that haven't been touched. And it's an absolute hot mess. So maybe I'll take you with me, hopefully if I can, to show you how to go about trying to bring some sort of sense back into that complete and utter chaos. So for the moment, it's bye from me, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye now.